We cannot use a normal form of reform of the monetary system of the United States. The situation is too bad and too urgent. Therefore, we're going to have to go from the kind of monetary system we had, not a monetarist system, but the monetary system we had at former times, as in Roosevelt's time, to do something Roosevelt had not really attempted to do explicitly. And that is to put the nation back under the provision of its original Constitution to function as a credit system rather than a money system. There's not enough money that we can create legally and prudently to save this nation. We've gone too far, too long, especially since 2007. Therefore, we're going to have to go to what is enshrined in our original federal Constitution, to a credit system. In other words, the federal government will, under law, instead of a money system, will have a credit system. And the credit system will be used not only to get the police, the firemen, and other essential state-level people back into employment, to get federal institutions which are needed back into employment and functioning, but we're going to have to go beyond that. We're going to require a very large and powerful driver for a genuine economic recovery of not only of the United States, but also of nations which are friendly, shall we say, or will become friendly to the United States. Right now, for example, in Europe, in Western Europe, from the coast of Spain and Portugal, all the way to the borders of Russia today, there is no sovereignty in continental Europe. It has been destroyed by the present system. Therefore, Europe is right now null. It has no long-term viability. It's about to crumble, to disintegrate before our eyes. We cannot have Europe collapsing before our eyes in that fashion. But Europe cannot act efficiently except that the United States acts first. Now, what will happen? If the United States acts in a way which agrees with what I have said here today, then we are going to go ahead and we're going to create our credit system-based economic system, as prescribed explicitly by the Constitution and implicitly by President Roosevelt. We're going to get our nation functioning immediately. Now, that will create a challenge for the European nations, especially those of Western and Central Europe. Because if we do that, if we rescue ourselves, then the entire European monetary system, as it presently is organized, will immediately collapse. Now, it doesn't have to go into the actual collapse. It's going to the door of the collapse. And it's very important that I explain to our European friends what we're going to do to them and what we're going to do for them. What we're going to do is tell them to join us in a reform of monetary systems of the like, which will enable Europe to follow the same course that we are following. We will create a joint credit system. What we will do with Europe, in cooperation with Europe and with Russia and with China and with India and so forth, what we will do is establish a kind of credit system which will be universal among these nations. We will go to credit as a way of investing in a buildup of the productive powers of labor throughout that region. That will be welcomed by China, be welcomed by probably India, because, of course, welcomed by the right people in Russia. And I don't mean right wing. And therefore we will create what Roosevelt intended at Bretton Woods. Roosevelt had intended, Franklin Roosevelt, had intended to create an international credit system, which he had negotiated with people like Joseph Stalin, not the easiest person to deal with in the world. But Roosevelt was successful in getting that kind of agreement. We're going to bring the world together around a credit system. We're going to build a system based on high technology. We're going to increase the physical productive powers of labor per capita. We're going to engage in great operations inside the United States, like NWAPA, the northern, that particular system. That system will be the driver, and the driver needed to be the driver needed on a scale required to not only save this nation, but to start it on a course of accelerating growth. An accelerating role in terms of space programs, in terms of all other kinds of things, which will be engendered by the United States in its spirit, its natural spirit. We have the people who have been long unemployed, who are like me, or people say, why don't you retire them? A bit old, huh? It seems. But we're not dead, and we're not dumb. And that's an advantage. And therefore we're going to create that kind of, we're going to create a new future for mankind. The type that Franklin Roosevelt envisaged as a system of credit used to rebuild a shattered world. We can do it. It will work. We simply have to get at it real fast, because people like me are getting a bit old, shall we say, long in the tooth. And therefore we've got to get this thing started while we're still around. And we have no choice, because if we don't do it immediately, we're going to die anyway. We're all going to go to bunk. The time has come that we must make the decisions which will save this nation from hell, save Europe from hell, save the world from hell. It can be done. It can be done only and with the bounds of the federal Constitution and the intention of that federal Constitution, by the founders of the system of credit, by the founders of our system republic. It can be done, and it must be done, and it must be done now. If we don't do it, we don't know what kind of hell our people and people of other nations will undergo if we don't get this change now. This is the greatest emergency which I know in all modern history, possibly also medieval history. It must be done. It must be done now. It can be done within the provisions of our federal Constitution, and only within the provisions of our federal Constitution. Because only if we act on our own principle, which is the original federal Constitution, can our action be respected and defended. Therefore, we must act entirely within the provisions of our original federal Constitution, and not deviate from the intention of those principles at any point. Because the first thing we must maintain is the credibility of the action we are taking. We cannot go even to retractive measures which violate that, because our nation has gone too long and too far in violation of its own Constitution. We have a contract with our people, the people of our republic, who may not fully understand all these things, but they're going to look back and wonder if we're putting something over on them. Therefore, we must not only act according to our intention of our original Constitution, we must emphasize repeatedly and explain again and again and again that we are sticking to the commitment which was represented by our Constitution. Because we must secure the lost trust of our government under presidents like this poor George Bush Jr. or Barack Obama, this poor wretched creature. We must regain the trust of our own people, the trust that we are acting in accord with the intention of our federal Constitution. We must not deviate from that. We must constantly discuss that with the people, remind them of this, remind the people of this, and act only under those instructions. The kind of emergency action which I represent in the speaking here thus today means that the trust of our people, the regained trust of our own people, who have totally lost trust with the leading parties of our nation, leading political party, are no longer trusted by the people. We have most of the people despise our Republican Party, our Democratic Party, for the treasonous actions they have taken against the vital interests and in the cause of great suffering by more and more of our people. You want to say that these parties, represent the people? They've lost all trust of the people. We must restore that trust. We must adhere strictly to our Constitution's intention, its original intention. We must not go beyond the bounds of that without the full consent of the American people for any changes made. And only on that basis can people like me, who are prominent citizens of our United States, but are not really given the power of government, but we will come together to act in concert on behalf of our government according to the principles on which our Constitution was framed. We must, within that limited power we have to propose, we must stick to those principles and make clear to the people again and again and again that it is in their interest and according to our constitutional principles that we are venturing to act an initiative to save this nation from hell right now. Thank you.